The winter night was cruel and heavy, pressing cold into every corner of the small town. Snow covered the roads, the roofs and the trees, turning everything silent and pale. The wind moved through the streets slowly but firmly, carrying the kind of cold that entered the bones and refused to leave. Most people stayed inside, wrapped in blankets, trusting their locked doors to protect them from the night. Near the edge of town stood an old wooden fence beside an empty field. Behind that fence sat a German shepherd. Her body was thin, her fur dull and rough from weeks of cold and hunger. Snow clung to her back and face, melting slowly against her warmth. She did not move much. She stayed still because 4 small puppies were pressed against her belly. The puppies were tiny and weak. Their eyes were barely open. Their bodies shook as they tried to stay warm. The mother wrapped herself around them tightly, curling her body like a shield. Every breath she took was slow and careful. She was tired, but she did not rest. The dog lifted her head and looked toward the town. Her ears moved slightly as she listened. She could smell warmth and food from far away. She knew people lived nearby. For days she had stayed hidden, afraid to approach anyone. She had learned long ago that humans were not always kind. The wind grew stronger. One puppy cried softly. The sound was weak and short. The mother lowered her head and touched the puppy gently with her nose. Her eyes showed fear, not for herself, but for them. She made a choice. Slowly, she stood up. Her legs shook as she moved. She looked back at the puppies, then toward a house not far away. A small light shone through one window. It was the only light on the street. The German shepherd walked carefully through the snow. Each step was heavy. The cold burned her paws, but she did not stop. She reached the house and stood near the porch. She looked at the door for a long moment. Then she let out a soft sound. Inside the house, a man named Mark sat alone at his table. He was in his early 40s and lived a quiet life. He worked during the day and spent his nights reading or watching old shows. He did not have family nearby. He did not have pets. He was used to silence. When he heard the sound, he froze. It was not loud, but it was clear. It carried fear and hope together. Mark stood up and walked toward the door. He opened it slightly. Cold air rushed inside. Snow blew against his shoes. Then he saw her. The German shepherd stood there, shaking, her eyes locked on his. She did not bark. She did not move forward. She simply stood and waited. Mark felt unsure. He had never planned to help an animal. Still, something about her eyes stopped him from closing the door. They were not angry. They were not wild. They were asking. The dog turned her head and walked a few steps away. Then she stopped and looked back at him. Mark understood. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The door closed behind him with a soft sound. The night felt colder now, but he followed her. The German shepherd led him past the fence and toward a small broken shed near the woods. The wood was cracked. The roof had holes. Snow filled the inside. It offered no real shelter. Inside the shed lay the puppies. Mark's heart dropped. They were so small. Their bodies barely moved. One of them tried to cry but could not make a sound. The mother stood beside them, watching Mark closely. She did not growl. She did not step away. She trusted him because she had no other choice. Mark knelt down slowly. He removed his coat and wrapped the puppies carefully. He lifted them one by one, holding them close to his chest. The mother followed him without hesitation. They returned to the house quickly. Mark opened the door wide and let them inside. Warm air filled the space. He placed the puppies near the heater on old blankets. The mother curled around them instantly. For the first time that night, the puppies stopped shaking. Mark watched quietly. He felt something change inside him. The house no longer felt empty. It felt needed. As the mother rested, Mark noticed a worn collar around her neck. It was old and faded. A name was scratched into the metal. The name was Luna. Mark stared at it, his breath caught in his chest. A memory stirred in his mind, one he had buried long ago. And suddenly, this night felt like more than chance. The house slowly filled with warmth as the heater worked through the cold night. Snow tapped gently against the windows, but inside the air felt calm and safe. Mark stood quietly, watching the German shepherd and her puppies rest on the blankets. The dog stayed alert even while lying down, her eyes following every small movement he made. Mark moved slowly so he would not scare her. He placed a bowl of water near the blankets and then stepped back. The dog lifted her head and sniffed the air. She waited a moment before drinking, never taking her eyes off the puppies for long. Mark sat in a chair nearby. He had not planned for this night to change his life. He only knew that turning away would have been wrong. The silence of the house felt different now. It felt alive. The puppies began to move more as the warmth reached them. One stretched a tiny paw. Another pressed closer to the mother. Their breathing became steady and calm. The German shepherd lowered her head and rested her chin on the blanket, but she did not fully sleep. Mark noticed the collar again. The metal was scratched and dull. The name Luna was still clear. Seeing it made his chest feel tight. Memories came back slowly, like snow melting under weak sunlight. Years ago, Mark and his brother had grown up with a German shepherd named Luna. She had been smart and loyal. She followed them everywhere. During a storm long ago, she had disappeared. They searched fields and roads for weeks. They never found her. Mark stood up and knelt near the dog. He spoke softly. He said the name again. Luna lifted her head and looked at him closely. Her ears moved slightly. Her tail shifted once against the floor. She remembered. Mark felt tears burn behind his eyes, but he stayed calm. He did not reach out too fast. He allowed her to decide. After a moment, Luna leaned forward and touched his hand with her nose. It was a small action, but it carried years of trust. The wind outside grew louder. The night stretched on. Mark stayed awake, checking the puppies often. He brought more blankets and kept the room warm. Luna watched him carefully, but no longer with fear. Hours passed slowly. Near morning, the sky outside turned pale gray. Snow still covered everything, but the storm had eased. The puppies slept deeply now, their bodies rising and falling with each breath. Mark finally allowed himself to sit back and rest. His mind was full of questions. How had Luna survived? Where had she gone all those years? Why had she returned now? He understood one thing clearly. She had come because she trusted him. She had chosen his door out of many others. When the sun rose, Mark made a call to a local rescue center. He explained the situation calmly. He did not give many details. He only said a mother dog and puppies needed help. When the rescue worker arrived, she spoke gently and moved carefully. She checked the puppies and smiled with relief. She said they were strong for their age. She praised Luna for protecting them. Mark listened quietly. When the worker asked about taking them to a shelter, Mark paused. He looked at Luna. She was watching him closely. He shook his head. They would stay. The rescue worker nodded. She understood. She offered supplies and advice. Before leaving, she looked at Mark and smiled. She said not many people would have opened their door that night. After she left, Mark cleaned the house and prepared a space just for Luna and the puppies. He moved furniture and laid down more blankets. He bought food and bowls. He learned quickly. Days passed. The puppies grew stronger each morning. They learned to walk on unsteady legs. They explored the room in small steps. Luna followed them closely, guiding them with gentle nudges. Mark returned from work each evening to find new changes. One puppy would bark softly. Another would tug at his shoe. The house filled with small sounds and movement. Luna stayed near him now. She followed him from room to room. She rested near the door when he left and waited when he returned. Her eyes were calm again. At night, Mark would sit quietly and watch them sleep. He thought about how close they had come to losing everything. He thought about the sound that had pulled him to the door. The cold no longer felt so strong. Weeks passed. Snow melted slowly. The town returned to its normal rhythm. Inside the house, life continued to grow. Luna had not come back by accident. She had come home. As the days passed, Mark noticed how much the house had changed. The silence that once filled every corner was gone. In its place were soft sounds of movement, light steps, and gentle breaths. The puppies were growing quickly, gaining strength with each new day. Every morning, Mark woke up early to check on them. Luna always lifted her head when he entered the room. Her eyes followed him, calm but alert. She trusted him now, but her duty as a mother never rested. The puppies began to show their own small personalities. One was curious and tried to explore every corner. Another stayed close to Luna at all times. One liked to sleep the most. The smallest one struggled to keep up but tried hard each day. Mark watched them with quiet care. He learned how to prepare food and clean their space. He learned how to move slowly and speak softly. He had never imagined himself doing these things, but they felt natural now. Luna stayed close to him whenever he was home. She followed him into the kitchen and sat nearby while he cooked. She rested near his chair when he read. Sometimes she placed her head near his feet, a silent sign of comfort. At night, Mark often thought about the past. He remembered his brother and the long search for Luna years ago. He remembered the sadness that followed when hope faded. Seeing her now felt unreal, like a door that had reopened after being closed for too long. One evening, as snow melted outside and water dripped from the roof, Mark sat on the floor near Luna. He spoke softly, telling her about the years that had passed. He talked as if she understood every word. Luna listened quietly. Her ears moved with his voice. Her eyes stayed on him. She did not turn away. That night, Luna did something new. When Mark stood up to go to bed, she followed him and lay down near his door. It was a simple act, but it showed she had chosen him again. The puppies continued to grow stronger. They began to play with each other, rolling and tumbling across the floor. Their movements were clumsy but full of energy. Mark laughed quietly when he watched them. Neighbors started to notice changes. They saw Mark buying supplies and walking outside with Luna. Some asked questions. Mark only smiled and said he had visitors. One afternoon, a woman from the rescue center returned to check on the puppies. She smiled when she saw how healthy they looked. She praised Mark for his care and patience. She asked again about finding homes for the puppies when the time came. Mark nodded slowly. He knew that day would arrive. He wanted what was best for them. Luna watched the conversation closely. She stayed near the puppies, her body calm but protective. As the weeks passed, the puppies became playful and strong. They learned to walk outside for the first time. Snow had almost disappeared now, leaving soft ground beneath their paws. Luna guided them, stopping often to make sure none fell behind. Mark walked beside them, moving slowly and watching carefully. He felt proud, though he did not fully understand why. These small lives had trusted him from the start. One evening, as the sun set low and painted the sky with soft colors, Luna stopped near the fence where she had once waited in the cold. She stood still for a long moment. Mark stopped beside her. He followed her gaze. The fence looked the same, but everything else felt different. Luna turned her head and looked at him. Her eyes were gentle. She moved closer and stood at his side. Mark understood then that Luna was not just surviving anymore. She was living again. That night, Mark sat alone after the puppies fell asleep. He thought about how close everything had come to ending before it began. He thought about the choice he made when he opened the door. He realized that Luna had not just asked for shelter. She had asked for trust. Outside, the night was calm. The cold had faded. Inside, warmth remained. Luna slept peacefully near the puppies. Her breathing was slow and steady. For the first time in a long time, she was not guarding against fear. Mark turned off the light and walked away quietly. He felt a sense of peace he had not known before. The journey was not over yet. But they were no longer alone. Spring arrived slowly, changing the town one day at a time. Snow disappeared from the roads and fields, leaving soft ground and fresh air behind. Trees began to show small green leaves. The cold that once ruled the nights faded into memory. Inside the house, life continued to grow. The puppies were no longer weak or unsteady. They ran across the floor with confidence, chasing each other and learning their strength. Their eyes were bright. Their movements were full of joy. Mark adjusted his routine to care for them. He woke up earlier. He came home faster after work. The house that once felt empty now welcomed him with sound and motion. Luna watched everything carefully. She guided the puppies with patience. She corrected them gently when they wandered too far. Her strength had returned fully. Her fur shined again. She stood tall and calm, proud of what she had protected. The rescue worker visited again one warm afternoon. She watched the puppies play and smiled. She said it was time to think about their future. Families were waiting. Homes were ready. Mark felt a quiet weight in his chest. He knew this moment would come. He wanted what was best for them. Still, letting go would not be easy. Over the next few days, families came to meet the puppies. Mark watched closely. He asked questions. He made sure each home felt right. Luna stayed nearby, observing each visitor with calm focus. One by one, the puppies left for their new homes. Each goodbye was gentle but heavy. Mark reminded himself that this was a good thing. The puppies were safe. They were loved. Luna watched each one go. She stayed calm. She did not cry or resist. She trusted the process. When the last puppy left, she walked slowly through the house, checking each space. That night, the house felt quiet again. Mark sat on the floor, unsure of how to feel. Luna walked toward him and sat beside him. She placed her head against his leg. They were still together. Days passed. Luna and Mark settled into a new routine. Morning walks became longer. Evenings were peaceful. Luna rested near the window, watching the world outside. Mark realized something important. Luna had come to him not only to save her puppies. She had come back because she remembered him. She remembered safety. One evening, Mark visited his brother. He told him everything. He showed pictures. He shared the story. His brother listened quietly. When he saw Luna again, his eyes filled with emotion. Luna recognized him too. She stepped forward and touched his hand gently. Some bonds never disappear. When Mark returned home that night, he felt complete. The past no longer felt painful. It felt healed. Luna slept peacefully beside him. Her journey had been long. Her struggles had been many. But she had survived. She had trusted. She had returned. And because one man opened a door on a cold night, a life was saved, a family was restored, and a quiet house became a home again. The winter that once brought fear had also brought hope. And hope stayed.